let's pick up where we left off. So how do two men, a year apart, in different states, give such similar stories? Ellis argues that officers transplant details. He claims that his confessions are made under extreme physical and mental duress. Of course, the police, both military and civilian, deny these claims. Stay on to the end when I come back to a probable answer of how these two men's confessions could be so similar.
And Joe Fuel, Ellis' brother, it seems that Ellis implicated him in at least two of his confessions. Joe is arrested by military authorities in Korea, shipped home, and sent back to Birmingham to stand trial after he was indicted by a grand jury alongside his brother. And the trial, well, that's where the tale has more twists than a country back road. Ellis Fuel's trial begins in September 1952. 9 folks back Fuel's alibi: his mother Ozella, his brother Joe, his uncle Archie Tubbs, and Archie's daughter. Ellis claims that on Sunday, the day of the murder, he and his brother took a 10 a.m. bus to Archie's place near Summerton and stayed all day long. Corroborating this story are neighbors Mr. and Mrs. Henson, who visited the Tubbs home around 5 p.m. with their 2 daughters, who were former classmates of Ellis. Mrs. Henson fixed the time of their visitation by her farm routine. She testified that she always milked her cows at 6 p.m. promptly. Any later in the day, and the cows became fidgety. The Hensons testified that the Fuel brothers were at the Tubbs home Sunday between 5 and 6 p.m. Defense attorneys argued that this guarantees that the brothers couldn't have been in Ensley at the time of Phyllis Carver's missing time between 6:04 and 6:20, as Ensley is some 30 minutes away. Witness after witness comes forward. Many vouch for Fuel, including Erle Carver, Phyllis's mother, and the first witness for the defense. She denies that her husband had any problems with the Fuels, insisting there was no secret for Phyllis to know which might have gotten her killed. Mary Weldon, Fuel's grandmother, takes the stand and places Fuel at her home early Monday morning, the day Phyllis' body was found. And remember the old coal miner who claimed to hear a child screaming in a passing car on a long, winding road headed from Bayview to Edgewater? Later, his pals come forward to sheepishly admit that he was with them at 6:30 p.m., making illegal moonshine miles away. And what of Hamaker's confession? Nothing on Hamaker reaches Fuel's jury. But the testimony that convicted Fuel, other than the omission of his confessions, which he recanted and refused to sign, is the testimony from Myrtle Johnson. She claims Fuel visited her home Monday morning, April the 11th, before the body was found. This implied he knew too much, so he must have been there at the scene. After 4 days of testimony, the jury gets the case on Friday, September 26th. The courtroom is packed at first, but folks begin to trickle out, figuring no verdict will be rendered that night. Yet at 5 p.m., bam, guilty of second-degree murder, meaning no premeditation, just spur-of-the-moment violence. Sentence? 30 years. Judge Alta King is stunned. Lucky to draw such a light sentence, he said. Frankly, the only verdict I could have seen was death. Ellis Fuel is sent to Kilby Prison, where he toils on the prison farm, working out his sentence. Why the rushed verdict? Whispers spread. Deputy Solicitor Cecil Deason later hears from a juror that 2 other jurors had tickets to the Alabama-LSU game in Baton Rouge the next day and were anxious to get on the road. Only in Alabama. Alabama won 21-20, by the way. And what of John Pinckney Hamaker? 11 days after Fuel's conviction, Hamaker is sent to Bryce Hospital in Tuscaloosa. And Ellis' brother? The charges against him are dismissed and the case dropped. In the years following Fuel's conviction, Odell Carver, Phyllis' father, believed that the jury got it wrong. In a letter to a highly placed Alabama official, he writes, "My little girl was murdered. The person who did awful things must have been crazy. But I don't want the wrong person punished." The case attracts a nationwide audience and some pretty famous followers. Earl Stanley Gardner of Perry Mason fame is one such follower, and the former attorney and author enlists his team of investigators on the court of last resort to investigate the case.
The court of last resort.
Court of Last Resort is actually at work today, investigating cases throughout the United States. Its Board of Investigators, a group of 7 men, experts in law and criminology.
Aiming to free the wrongly
Bound together
convicted,
in
the
their
Court of Last Resort reviews thousands of cases with experts like forensic specialist Dr. Lemoyne Snyder. Dr. Snyder's report paints the killer in extraordinary mental turmoil, seriously mentally ill, driven to something far beyond a simple murder. In 30 years of cases, Snyder says he's never seen a teenager commit brutality like this. And remember, Fuel would have been 17 at the time of the murder. And Fuel has shown no violent traits in the years since his conviction. His prison record is spotless. Snyder reckons the real killer would have cracked under that turmoil. Myrtle Johnson Mitchell, whose testimony was key, recanted, saying she had confused the dates. Fuel had indeed visited her house on Tuesday morning, after news of the murder broke. Her sister Myrtis had told investigators this in 1949, and one officer admitted that it cleared Fuel, but somehow the statement vanished. Myrtle wasn't questioned until 3 years later, just before the trial. Meanwhile, questions remain. Why did authorities ignore Hamaker? His confession aligned better with the evidence, while Fuel's had gaps. Was Fuel targeted because of Hamaker's mental health issues, which made him potentially harder to prosecute? With the Court of Last Resort's investigation and a push by Birmingham news writer Clancy Lake and other city officials, the case is kept alive. The national men's magazine Argosy chronicles the story in the 1958 issues, and the Birmingham News covers the case in 12 articles titled Analysis of a Murder, each article focusing on a particular aspect of the case. Despite repeated setbacks with the parole board, on April 10th, 1959, exactly 10 years after the murder, Ellis Fuel is paroled. He and his mother move to Texas, where Ellis eventually marries and has a family. He keeps an unblemished record and in 1964 is pardoned by the state of Alabama. He dies of old age in Fort Worth in 2019. John Hamaker dies in 1967 at the age of 50 in Johnson City, Tennessee at the Veterans Hospital there.
So back to our question, how do 2 men, a year apart, in different states give such similar stories? Well, I have a theory. It could have been that stories were transplanted, as Ellis said, or it could have been that the newspapers published so many details of Phyllis Carver's death, particularly in an April 17, 1949 article, that anyone could have given a fairly thorough breakdown of the case. The article included a timeline of death, the type of clothing Phyllis had on, and a breakdown of the injuries and insults she suffered. Perhaps this is the reason that 2 men gave similar confessions. It was all laid out for them in the papers. If Ellis was afraid for his life, perhaps he recalled what he had read. And Hamaker, confessing 3 times and once under truth serum. Well, were either of these men guilty, or was it someone else entirely? Who was the real killer? That remains unsolved. Thank you for joining Town Square Tales. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and step back with us into history's shadows. This case was suggested by a viewer. If you would like for us to look into a story from Jefferson County's past, let us know.